So today we're going to go over the last progression for these multiple angle identities. It's going to be going from an angle that we don't know, like the sine of 105, and using the half angle identity to use an angle that we do know to find the solution. So looking at the sine of 105, that's not an angle we know. We don't know its reference angle. So what we need to do is multiply it by 2 and see if that makes an angle that we do know. So 105 times 2 would be 210. And we do know the reference angle of 210. That's in the third quadrant with a reference angle of 30. So now what we have is we can put this in our half angle formula, 210 over 2, which is essentially the same thing as 105. 210 over 2 is 105. But now I'm going to use my formula to solve. So I have plus or minus the square root of 1 minus cosine of 210 over 2. And then from here, all you're doing is solving. So you would have plus or minus the square root of 1 minus cosine 210 is cosine 30, which is going to be root 3 over 2. In the second quadrant, the third quadrant is negative over 2. So you get plus or minus 1 plus root 3 over 2 over 2. And remember, to get rid of this complex fraction, you just multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. Those are going to cancel out, and you get plus or minus the square root of 1/2 times 1. Remember, you have to multiply this by the entire numerator. So you get 1/2 plus root 3 over 4. Alright, and the last thing you have to do is figure out whether it's positive or negative. So this 105 is in the second quadrant for sine. It's going to be about here. So it is in fact going to be positive, so your final answer would be the square root of 1/2 plus root 3 over 4. And that's your answer. Alright, let's look at another. Here we have the cosine of 75. Again, if we were to divide 75 by 2, we wouldn't get anything pretty. We don't know the cosine of 75, so we're going to, again, try and multiply by 2. 75 times 2 is 150. Again, we do know 150 because that's in the second quadrant with a reference angle of 30. So I can do the cosine of 150 over 2, and you just plug that into the formula. So here we have plus or minus the square root of 1 plus cosine 150 over 2. That's the only difference between the sine half angle and the cosine half angle formula. So now we just solve plus or minus the square root of cosine 150. Again, it's in the second quadrant, so it's going to be negative. So I end up with 1 minus root 3 over 2 over 2. And once again, I have a complex fraction, so I want to multiply by 1/2. Multiply by 1/2. It's going to cancel. I have to distribute this 1/2. Let's get plus or minus the square root of 1/2 minus root 3 over 4. So the only difference here was the last one was positive. This one's negative. We have to check this sign here. 75 is in the first quadrant, so it's going to be positive. So your final answer would be the square root of 1/2 minus root 3 over 4. And again, if we compare that to the one before, the only difference is this was a positive and this is a negative. So you'll see some similar answers here, just like we have in the past. With tangent of 22.5, again, really all we're doing is multiplying it by 2 and seeing if it's anything that we are comfortable with. And you'll see that it does work out nicely, tan 45. So we have the tangent of 45 over 2, which equals 45, which equals 22.5, so it is going to work out. And we can use either one of these identities. I'm going to use the first one. 1 minus cosine of 45 over sine 45. And now we're just going to work this out. So 1 minus root 2 over 2 over root 2 over 2. And now again I have a complex fraction here, so I need to multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. That cancels. And again we have to distribute. So we get 2 over root 2 minus both of those cancel, so we have 1. So you could leave your answer like this and that would be fine, but if you do want to clean it up a little bit, you could multiply by, you could rationalize this value here by multiplying by root 2 over root 2. So ultimately what you would get is 2 root 2 over 2 minus 1. Those 2's cancel, so you get root 2 minus 1, which is a pretty nice answer. So that's how we solve these half-angle identities using an angle that we don't know. We are going to also do these triangle problems with half angles. We saw the double angles last class, so now we're going to look at the half angles. So given that A is an acute angle in some triangle, sine of A equals 3/5. So I know that my opposite side is 3, my hypotenuse is 5, because sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So this is a 3, 4, 5 triangle, so I can know this third value is 4. If I wanted to solve for it, I could using Pythagorean theorem, but there's really no need here. So now what I'm going to do is just plug this into my identity, tan of A over 2, which equals, again, it doesn't matter which one you use, 1 minus cosine A over sine A. Cosine of A is 4/5, because here, again, I have adjacent over hypotenuse. So I'm going to have 1 minus 4/5 over the sine of A, which I was given, 3/5. So you get 1/5 over 3/5. Again, we have a complex fraction here, so multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. Those 5's cancel, and your final answer would be 1/3. So really this isn't any different from what we were doing before. We're just plugging into the half angle identity now. So that's the lesson for today. Hope this helps with your homework. Remember that number 5 is a little tricky, so don't stress too much about that one. But I think you can figure it out. So good luck. Have a good day.